Hello. Thank you for visiting the Other Woman and Man Stories channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And here we go. James and Kaylee met completely by chance during a walk in the park. The young woman decided to spend her day off, enjoying the fresh air after the rain. She unexpectedly lost her umbrella, which she didn't end up needing that day anyway. Passing by, a young man named James noticed the girl had left her umbrella on the bench. He caught up with her and returned the lost item. The girl was very grateful to him for his honesty and attentiveness. A conversation sparked between them. During their chat, Kaylee was struck by the beauty of James's bright blue eyes. His gaze made an indelible impression on her. After talking, they exchanged phone numbers. The relationship between James and Kaylee began developing on its own, without any special plans or goals. At the time, James worked as a truck driver for a delivery company. Kaylee worked as a call center operator. She wasn't trying to actively climb the career ladder. After graduating from college, the girl took this job to gain financial independence from her parents. Initially, she saw this position as temporary, but over time, Kaylee stayed with the call center permanently. The couple dated for about a year. To James's surprise, Kaylee announced she was pregnant. This news caught the young man off guard. He hadn't planned on becoming a father anytime soon. Nevertheless, James nobly decided to marry Kaylee, despite not considering her the love of his life at the time. His own bitter childhood experience of growing up without a father greatly influenced this decision. James's mom told him his dad had abandoned them after learning of her pregnancy. That's why James was determined not to leave his girlfriend at such a responsible moment. The wedding ceremony was modest, without frills. The newlyweds invited only their closest relatives, then quietly celebrated the event in a small cafe. At that time, James didn't have his own housing, but he quickly found a solution to this issue. His sister Susan had long lived in another state. However, she still owned an apartment in her hometown and was in no hurry to sell it due to the unfavorable real estate market conditions in their region. Significant funds had been invested in renovating and furnishing the apartment, so Susan was reluctant to rent it out to strangers. When James called his sister and shared the joyful news of his upcoming wedding, Susan happily offered the young family to live in her apartment until they saved up for their own home. She was glad her beloved brother had found personal happiness and was willing to help the newlyweds feather their nest. James and Kaylee gratefully accepted her offer of assistance. They moved into Susan's spacious, comfortably furnished apartment. Kaylee registered at the Women's Health Clinic and began preparing to become a mother. However, soon the family was struck by tragedy. Kaylee miscarried in early pregnancy. This news was a terrible blow to both spouses. James was deeply upset and grieved. In his mind, he already imagined a baby appearing in their home, playing with the child and delighting in every smile. The loss of the unborn baby caused him immense emotional pain. Kaylee also struggled hard with what had happened. After being discharged from the hospital, she was depressed and taciturn. James tried to surround his wife with care and attention, helping her pull herself together. He bought vitamins, healthy foods, and created every condition for her speedy recovery. Over time, Kaylee managed to get over the stress and return to normal life, although memories of the loss still occasionally troubled her. Unlike his wife, it took James much longer to overcome the bitterness of the tragedy. Thoughts of the child who was not meant to be born often visited him at night. After a year of living together, James had become so used to loving and protecting Kaylee that he could no longer imagine himself without her. Although the marriage was originally due to an unplanned pregnancy, over time the young man had genuinely become attached to his wife. Therefore, even after the tragedy, a breakup was not considered an option by him. A year later, disagreements arose between the spouses related to the family's financial security. James still worked as a truck driver and received a modest but stable salary. However, Kaylee began to express dissatisfaction with their financial situation. She insisted that her husband take a higher paying position that would allow her to quit working at the call center. Kaylee complained that she didn't feel a strong male shoulder next to her that could provide a carefree existence. Such ambitious aspirations of his wife caused James serious irritation. He repeatedly explained to Kaylee that this was not the right time for a drastic change of job and financial adventures. For a long time, James had been setting aside part of his salary to buy their own apartment for the family, whereas Kaylee spent her modest earnings exclusively on herself, occasionally buying groceries for the home. The prospect of shouldering all family expenses solely on her husband's shoulders categorically did not suit James. However, his arguments found no response or understanding from Kaylee. Over time, because of this conflict, Kaylee began to show coldness and irritation towards her husband. There were times when James returned home after a shift and Kaylee hadn't even made dinner for him, despite spending the whole day at home. With an abundance of free time, Kaylee got acquainted with some of the neighbors. She was especially interested in a single young man named Tom who lived upstairs. He was handsome, wealthy, and led a rather reclusive life working remotely from home. Despite her own marriage, Kaylee tried in every possible way to attract the attention of this promising bachelor. During her next visit home, James's sister Susan decided to surprise her brother by secretly visiting him at work. They went shopping, bought a cake, and headed to James's apartment. But for some reason, Kaylee wasn't home. When she finally arrived, she explained her absence by the need to buy matches, supposedly running out at home. However, Susan clearly saw a full box of matches in the kitchen cabinet. This episode alarmed her and reinforced suspicions that Kaylee was hiding something from her brother. Later, speaking privately, James confessed to Susan about the problems that had arisen with his wife due to her desire to quit working. Now the elder sister was convinced the newlyweds were going through a crisis. The next day, before leaving, Susan tried to talk to Kaylee, but didn't find her at home again. Susan heard some noise in the stairwell and looked through the peephole out of curiosity. She witnessed an extremely ambiguous scene. A cheerful and slightly disheveled Kaylee was coming down the stairs from the floor above, accompanied by her neighbor Tom. He slapped her on the buttocks as they parted ways. Susan was shocked by what she saw, as Kaylee and Tom's behavior clearly exceeded the bounds of decency. Kaylee entered the apartment and bumped nose to nose with Susan. The surprise on her face was beyond description. "Oh, Susie, you're already home," Kaylee stammered. "Yes, and where are you coming back from?" Susan asked calmly. "Me. I took out the trash," Kaylee replied hesitantly. Susan looked at her coldly straight in the eye and paused. "I saw you with Tom," she said. Kaylee froze in surprise. Her eyes darted around as her mouth repeatedly opened. She was trying to figure out how to respond. But Susan already understood everything. She said goodbye and went outside. Upon returning home, she called her brother and immediately told him everything, advising him to thoroughly examine the situation, since Kaylee might be cheating on him. Susan sincerely cared for James and wanted his happiness. James decided to end the uncertainty and deal with the situation once and for all. Returning home earlier than usual, he didn't find his wife there. James went upstairs and knocked on the neighbor's door. "Who's there?" Tom's voice rang out. "Delivery service," James laconically introduced himself. As soon as Tom cracked open the door, James abruptly threw it open and burst inside. "Where is she?" he shouted loudly, roughly pushing the stunned neighbor aside. Going into the bedroom, James saw his naked wife sprawled negligently on the bed. Anger boiled up in him with renewed force. Turning to Tom, who had run up, James grabbed him by the shirt collar and punched him in the face with all his might. Another blow and another. Soon the bloody Tom collapsed at his feet. While the terrified Kaylee hysterically screamed, James silently left the neighbor's apartment. After gathering up his wife's belongings, he threw them in the nearest dumpster. The day after the incident, James immediately filed for divorce. After the official dissolution of the marriage, James plunged headfirst into work to somehow dull the pain of his beloved wife's betrayal. He spent days on end at work, taking on the most difficult routes and shifts. It helped him not to think about what had happened. A few months later, James got a job as a driver at another larger transport company. There he received a higher and more stable salary, as well as the opportunity to take overtime hours. This allowed him to actively save up money to buy his own apartment, a goal he had been striving for a long time already. Kaylee was unable to move in with Tom. He saw their affair as a pleasant intrigue and had no intention of tying himself down in a serious relationship. Left without means of subsistence, she tried to win James back. She called him several times, begging him to return, and even came to see him at work. When nothing helped, Kaylee resorted to a desperate measure. She announced a fictitious pregnancy, hoping to manipulate James that way. However, he had already seen through her true nature and didn't believe a single word. James realized it was just another lie and vile blackmail. And indeed, it eventually turned out his guesses were right. There was no child. James was infinitely grateful to his sister Susan for helping him see Kaylee's true nature and her infidelity in time. Thanks to this, he managed to prevent further destruction of his life and start with a clean slate. That's the story. Share your thoughts in the comments about this situation and the behavior of the spouses. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and be sure to like this video. It will greatly help promote the channel. Take care and have a wonderful day.